Live from Washington, this is Access Point and I'm Aisha Tanzim. Hello and welcome. Pakistan's next Prime Minister in waiting, Nawaz Sharif, has already extended an olive branch to India and it has been warmly received. Could we hope for better relations between the two neighbors this time? Or, given the history, should we be skeptical? Joining me in studio is Dr. Stephen Cohen, a senior Brookings Fellow whose book on India and Pakistan's relationship has just come out. We don't have a copy of right here, but you can see it on screen. It's called Shooting for a Century, the India-Pakistan Conundrum, and I'm looking forward to reading it. On Skype from New Delhi, we have Ajay Sahni, the Executive Director of the Institute for Conflict Management. And from Karachi on the phone, we have Pakistan's former Foreign Secretary, Mr. Najmuddin Sheikh. Welcome to the show. So, Dr. Cohen, starting with you, are you hopeful or are you skeptical?
Both. The book and my own views are that there's deep reasons for India and Pakistan to normalize, to change from being the most intractable conflict in the world other than the Arabs and the Israelis. But also there's good reasons for this to continue on. And my prediction is cautiously pessimistic, that I think the hostility at one level or another will continue for another 35 years, which would make it a century. There are reasons for arguing that normalization could take place, the economic agreement and so forth. But there are a lot of people who want to break this up, who don't, on both countries, who don't want to see this happen. And the outsiders themselves are kind of ambivalent about this.
And so they don't know how. So we'll continue talking about that. Let me bring Mr. Sheikh in. Mr. Sheikh, we've seen Indian Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's special envoy, S.K. Lamba, meet Prime Minister in waiting, Nawaz Sharif, even before he's taken office. We've also heard rumors about an offer to give 1,000 megawatts of electricity to power Pakistan or sell it. Do you think this kind of interaction is something new? Have we seen this warmth right after the elections in the past?
Well, I think there has been, I think this dates back to the relationship that India believes Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif was seeking with India in his last term of office. And that is partly responsible for, I think, the very quick and I think warm reception that's been accorded to Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's election and the exchange of messages that has subsequently taken place. Today, I think Prime Minister Manmohan Singh spoke again on the subject, saying that all disputes between the two countries should be resolved through negotiations, and that he was looking forward to doing it, that he had invited Nawaz Sharif to India and noted that he himself had been invited to visit Pakistan.
Exactly.
These are good signs. I agree with Professor Cohen that there is every reason why the two countries should not just normalize relations but deepen their economic relations. But there's also reason for pessimism.
For pessimism and skepticism.
What has happened in the past.
Well, this is Mr. Sheikh. Let me bring in another element. This is an elected government, and the next Prime Minister will have to take into account what the public feels and what the public thinks. We have a very small measure of it through our social media platform. So let's go over to Sarah Zaman on our social media desk to find out what Pakistanis have told us about this relationship.
Thank you, Aisha. We asked users on our social media platforms to tell us what kind of relations they think Pakistan should have with India. Now, most of our commenters may be big fans of Bollywood, but when it comes to relations, they're expressing a strong sense of animosity and lack of trust towards India. On Facebook, Sohail Mushtaq says, every Pakistani government has tried to please India, but India never reciprocated that. Relations, he says, should be based on equality. He says, I don't know why our government are so afraid of India. Sayyida Nasima Anjum is suggesting that without ignoring core issues, the two countries should develop good relations on common grounds. And Saj Bukhari thinks it's important to maintain diplomatic relations, but he says don't expect much from the enemy. Now, while there are some who are favoring good relations between India and Pakistan, most commenters either don't think it's a good idea or don't think it's even possible. We also have some video comments. Let's take a look.
हम उनका सरबजीत मारते हैं, वो हमारा दूसरा नौला मारते हैं, हम क्या करते हैं वो एक और काम। ये चीज़ इस कोई फ़ायदा नहीं है, आवाम का नुकसान है। हम ये कहते हैं कि ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए। और ये बिल्कुल एक होना चाहिए। मैं तो ये कहता हूँ कि डिफेंस भी हमारा एक होना चाहिए, बल्कि उन ताकतों के ख़िलाफ़ होना चाहिए जो एक्चुअल हमारे दुश्मन हैं।
ये हमसाया एक ऐसा हमसाया है कि जिसने हमारे आज तक वजूद को तस्लीम नहीं किया है। हमारी नज़रियाती और जुग़राफ़ी सरहदों का अगर वो एहतराम करता है, अगर वो एक्सेप्ट करता है, उसके साथ अच्छे तल्क़ात बनाने चाहिए।
Now, the first commenter suggests ending tit-for-tat actions and even combining India and Pakistan's defense machinery against common enemies. But our second commenter says good relations are only possible if India wholeheartedly accepts the basis of Pakistan's creation, which he feels India hasn't. You can read more comments and share your thoughts with us on VOA Urdu's Facebook page. Now back to Aisha.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Ajay, I want to come to you. I don't know how much of the comments you could hear, but there was a strong sense, divided sentiment, but a strong sense that India is still the enemy. Is it the same feeling in India towards Pakistan?
I don't think so. The overwhelming proportion, both of the political rhetoric and of the general public, has tended to incline towards a sense of needing peace with Pakistan and friendship with Pakistan with a far greater urgency than I think even to be reasonable or rational, given the situation and the recurrent interference by Pakistan in Indian affairs, the sponsorship of terrorism over decades. So I'm actually quite surprised at the degree to which Indians seek friendship and the degree and the alacrity which with the Indian government has shown willingness to forget about the past and reach out, not just to Nawaz Sharif, but to each new regime in Pakistan over the last several decades. Whether it was Musharraf, whether it was Zardari, every preceding head of state or prime minister has secured.
Ajay, you believe India is moving too quickly, too soon. Dr. Cohen, this feeling
the heart of the book is 2 chapters which profile Indian and Pakistani opinion, not mass public opinion, but elite opinion. And clearly Ajay is right in that he belongs to one segment on the Indian curve, and he's describing the Pakistani curve. But objectively, I think what's happened, if you look at public opinion polls and whatever I can pick up, is that India has actually shifted towards a more hostile position towards Pakistan after years of looking for an agreement. And the Pakistanis are more eager for an agreement with India than before. So what I'm afraid is that especially younger Indians are more hostile because of Mumbai and so forth. What I'm afraid is these are going to be 2 ships passing in the night, that when Pakistan may be ready for an agreement or some kind of normalization process, Indians may be less ready. And of course, on either side, both sides, there's groups that want to break up any process. So that's why I'm cautiously skeptical.
Mr. Sheikh, I want to come to you. One of the things that India always said is Pakistan military is not on board. Nawaz Sharif will have to take the military on board. Do you think they're ready this time?
Well, I think first we should start with the fact that you gave us the comments on the social media. But I think one of the major factors was that in this election campaign, and this first, of course, the fact that one democratic government was being succeeded by another gave this election campaign a particular importance. And in this election campaign, not one of the political parties was sounding an anti-India note. India was not a factor in the election campaign. And whatever you heard with regard to India was that we should seek a normalization of relations with India. So I'm sure you realize that the political parties here are sensitive to the public mood. So while the social media comments are probably not something that you can ignore, certainly they don't represent the sort of view that the political parties are prepared to embrace.
Okay,
now, with regard to your question on the military,
let me come back to that question later. I want to take your comment and take it to Ajay. Ajay, what Mr. Sheikh just said is actually true. As journalists, we watched the campaign. There was not much anti-India rhetoric at all. In fact, most of the parties said they want good relations with India.
Yes, I would tend to incline to agree with both Mr. Sheikh and with Mr. Cohen right now, that as far as the mood in Pakistan is concerned, the crises within Pakistan have tended to force the realization that a hostile relationship with India cannot be sustained, at least at the level of hostility and the level of provocation that has been characteristic of the past. So there is, I think, yes, a shift in the mood in Pakistan. But the question that will arise and that will sort of concern us over the long term is whether this is a mood born of necessity or is it an actual transformation of belief or sentiment, a good faith effort to restore friendship with India, or simply a expedient forced upon Pakistan by the internal crises the country is currently undergoing.
And Dr. Cohen, you seem like you want to add something to it, but please, while you're adding it, also address this thing. We've seen it in other relationships too. Sometimes other things, trade relations, different kinds of relations, force countries to come together and overcome their differences. Is that a possibility with India and Pakistan?
It's a possibility, and they have enough interest in common, shared interests. I'd say stability in Afghanistan, water, the management of their nuclear relationship, and a normal relationship with China. All of these are critical, vital, strategic interests, let alone trade and economic issues. But I would go back to Mr. Sawhney's comment, and I'd bounce back to him the comment of a good friend of mine, General Mahmoud Durrani. We need to have trust. We need to trust between India and Pakistan. Well, I worked for President Reagan, who said to the Russians, he said, trust but verify. What India and Pakistan need to do is verify their agreements. Oftentimes there's an agreement on paper, it can't be verified. It's not, and both sides break these agreements on a routine basis. So in a sense, what's needed is more verification and less trust, perhaps. So I think I agree with them in a sense. If it's born out of necessity, it's good, but in a sense, there has to be reassurances to both sides, including the politicians of the country making the initiative, that these things are happening.
Okay, Mr. Sheikh, do you want to add something to that? And then I come back to my question, is the military ready to get on board this time?
Well, let me just add that, when Mr. Sawhney says that is this born of necessity or is this a genuine thing? I think between nations, relations are born very largely out of necessity. A necessity that, in India's case, to my mind, flows from the fact that its quest for a global status and for the growth levels that it desires, it needs a better relationship with its neighbors, particularly Pakistan. Pakistan, by the same token, is beginning to realize that its position is not just geostrategic, it's geoeconomic. And if it is going to realize the advantages, the economic advantages of its location, then it has to be a bridge between South Asia and Central Asia, between South Asia and the Middle East. And if that is going to be so, then a better relationship in economic terms with India is absolutely essential. And obviously from the economic relationships flow many other things. So I don't think that if a relationship proceeds from necessity, it's necessarily a bad thing, because it's recognizing what is necessary is what usually pushes a relationship.
And that, Mr. Sheikh, makes it an even more important question. If it's a relationship born out of necessity, then do we know that the military is on board this time? Are there indications of that?
Yes, there are, because the move towards most favored nation on the trade issue, and the trade issue is the one that India has been pushing most strongly in the composite dialogue, is something that would not have taken place had the army not been, the armed forces not been on board that particular policy. The issues that are now arising with regard to the trade issue are really issues pertaining to how Pakistan can best protect its economic interests while promoting trade. So the hurdle is not the military. The hurdle is how do you protect the industries that you wish to protect, and how do you secure?
How do you move forward? How do you move forward with the interest of both parties in mind? Now, in Pakistan, there's always been a tussle between the military and the civilian government, especially when it comes to India. So let's go over to our social media desk and find out what the public thinks should guide Indian policy.
Exactly, Aisha. We wanted to know where our viewers think policy guidelines should come as Pakistan works on relations with India. Should the parliament determine the direction of relations, or should Pak military take the lead? Now, on Facebook, Zubair Aslam says Nawaz government should guide the parliament, but after taking advice from the military. This will prevent any misunderstanding between the army and the government. Arshad Mughal thinks Nawaz Sharif won't be able to develop relations with India based on equality, so the army should take the lead. And Abrar Hussain believes the Nawaz government will have to take advice from the military. He says the military won't like any decision that's not in line with its policies. Now, from the comments we're getting on our Facebook page, there is a pretty even split between those who think foreign policy should be the domain of the democratic government and those who trust the military more than politicians when it comes to safeguarding Pakistan's interests. Back to you, Aisha.
Thank you very much. Dr. Cohen, you heard these comments. You heard Dr. Sheikh. Another thing that you said, trust but verify. U.S. has been playing a very important role in that regard. Can you tell me a little more about what role U.S. can play?
Well, I don't think the U.S. government can do very much, I'd like to see the U.S. government out of it, although I think there should be more high-level attention to this issue. We could help India and Pakistan by changing some of our regional policies. In fact, we don't have a regional policy process. We have an India policy, we have an Afghan policy, we have a Pakistan policy. We've never put the package together. But I think we should be encouraging the two to trade and should support that by speaking more positively of the pipeline and issues like that. Perhaps we should reward trade. But I think the major opportunity for confidence building will come from the private sector in America. There's a lot of expertise here on confidence building measures, and a lot of this is being transferred to India and Pakistan. They can learn something from that, but in fact, this process has been going on for at least 15 years now. So I'm not that optimistic about an official American role, especially on Kashmir, where I think we should stay out of it, although I think we should change our policy. But really, in terms of forcing the two together, I think they will come together normally, and we've seen a lot of movement in the last 4 years or so. Under this present government in Pakistan, and I think under Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. What concerns me is that the Prime Minister of Pakistan may become more hardline, depending on his experience, and the Prime Minister of India may not be Manmohan Singh, maybe somebody more hawkish, more less desirable of compromise. And of course, there's the China factor. China has a good relationship with Pakistan. It's a growing relationship with India. The Chinese themselves have to decide whether they want to encourage these two countries to have a normal relationship.
Now, Ajay, you said that India is moving too quickly, but some in Pakistan complained that India is not moving quickly enough. They said even during the last regime, there were issues that could have been resolved. They mentioned Sir Creek, they mentioned Siachen, that they said India dragged its feet on.
You see, it is the context that we have to remember when these discussions were happening. Usually tensions either in Kashmir or outside Kashmir as a result of some terrorist incident or the other invariably clustered around these various dialogue processes. And the processes then come under the pressure both of the public opinion and political parties over here who begin to say that some effort should be there to exert some pressure on Pakistan to end support to terrorism. So everything in the India-Pakistan relationship has been held hostage by Pakistan's continuous and explicit support to terrorism. I'd like to make another point relating to something Mr. Sheikh said. He said that India needs Pakistan if it is to grow rapidly, if it is to sustain its growth. I'd like to remind him that our most rapid growth between the years 1995, 2005, 2006 was over a period of extremely high conflict with Pakistan, including, of course, the Kargil episode, but continuous support to terrorism at very high levels in Jammu and Kashmir and an expanding campaign outside Jammu and Kashmir across the Indian mainland. And India continued to grow then. Relationships have been better, violence is down, but India's growth is also down. So I don't think, and this is something we should remember when we talk about trade relations between India and Pakistan transforming either country and the dynamics of peace in either country or in both countries. I don't think either India or Pakistan are so important to each other's economic future. They can play a peripheral role. If they are friendly, both would benefit. But I think politics will be the defining dynamic, not economics. We can both afford to ignore each other economically.
So let me bring Dr. Cohen in.
Yeah, there are really two theories about normalization. I won't say peace, but normalization. One is, as Mr. Soni says, that politics and strategy have to come first. The other is that people-to-people relations, economic ties, have to create pressures for normalization. And for reality, it's top-down and bottom-up at the same time. And I'm not optimistic that the process can be sustained for the long run. Because every time the politicians agree on a strategic relationship, somebody disrupts it. I think maybe 5 years from now, we'll see the growing roots of trade, normalization, cultural normalization will be such that it'll be in a politician's interest, the strategist's interest, to have normal relations. But again, you have the China factor as a major disruptive factor. Again, and I'm not quite sure whether anybody in either country has forgotten what China's role will be in South Asia.
Okay, well, now we need to talk about what steps to take to make these relationships better. And for that, let's go over to a social media platform once again where Sarah Zaman's waiting for us. We want to find out what the public thinks can be or should be done. Sarah.
All right, Aisha, as I shared with you and our viewers, most people on our social media platforms don't think India and Pakistan can have good relations. So we asked them what are some core issues that they think need to be resolved urgently to improve the situation. Now, between Kashmir issue, the division of water, and bilateral trade, an overwhelming majority picked the Kashmir issue as the matter that needs immediate attention. That may not be very surprising, but the interesting part is that when we asked people what should be done to improve bilateral ties, they had more than just resolving Kashmir issue on their list. Let's take a look at some video comments first.
Visa relaxation, easy visits of different delegations from both the countries to the other country, and once you increase the people-to-people contact, the relation will automatically become cordial.
India is a big market, and Pakistan and India, they can also share their products in agriculture, in this other industries like shoe, like clothing. So these all, we can interdependent on each other.
Media. Abdul Rashid says mutual interest issues should be resolved through dialogue and India should respond positively to Nawaz government's gestures. Amy Chaudhary suggests education quota should be created for students of both countries, and Ilyas Rezai thinks sports will be the best way to improve relations. Our Facebook page is buzzing right now with commenters sharing their thoughts on India-Pakistan relations. Do join the conversation at facebook.com/VOA Urdu. Back to Aisha.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And while we were watching you, we have another guest who's joined us from Lahore this time. Shamshad Ahmad Khan is the former Foreign Secretary of Pakistan who's joined us via telephone. Mr. Khan, we welcome you to the show.
Thank you.
I want to get your opinion on something that some of our guests have been arguing, which is to make the relationships better, do we need to have better trade relations, better economic relations first, or would the change come from politics?
I don't think this is an egg and chicken question. I think everything is important in any relationship, especially when there are outstanding disputes. You've got to address them as well. Of course, trade is an important interaction between any two neighbors. And for that, there should be a level playing field between the two countries. And it should be mutually beneficial. So both countries need to first go into deeper studies as to how they can develop their trade relationship. And I was also listening to some of the confidence-building measures like people-to-people contacts, student exchanges. These are all very important measures for amelioration of environment between the two countries. And these, at best, they can be called confidence-building measures. But confidence-building measures cannot be a substitute for conflict resolution. So we must keep an eye on the need for conflict resolution. Also, especially when there is an issue like Kashmir, which is the core issue between the two countries. So we have put in place, I personally was involved in 1997, 15 years ago, in institutionalizing a dialogue process, which is today familiarly known as the composite dialogue. It was supposed to be a process to address the issues between India and Pakistan because we knew that the complexity of the problems between the two countries was such that no one issue could be addressed as an event. So we thought we would put in place.
But the composite dialogue ended with Mumbai. So isn't that indicative of? And I'll come to you, Ajay, with this question in New Delhi. The composite dialogue ended with Mumbai. So two things. One thing that Mr. Khan said, it was supposed to be a process. Why was the process allowed to be broken up? And then I'll follow up with, isn't it indicative of the problems in the relationship that even the process cannot continue? Ajay.
Yes. Can I comment on that? Can I comment on that? You know, the composite dialogue did not end with Mumbai. Yes, it has been disrupted several times. It was disrupted even as early as 1999. when Kargil happened. So there have been disruptions, and Mumbai was also a disruption. And after Mumbai, the dialogue process, no matter under what nomenclature, under what name this process was resumed, it was resumed, and it has been resumed. And of course, there have been other glitches for which basically India is to blame, because India has thought that this is the best opportunity to keep Pakistan under pressure. And for everything that happens on India's soil, that it puts the blame on Pakistan.
Okay, so
that's why this dialogue has not gone ahead. And I can assure you that once this process is pursued faithfully, with sincerity of purpose,
you think the process will work. Ajay, what would you say?
You see, it's this pattern of obtuseness in argument that becomes the problem. India is to blame for everything in the disruption of the process. Mumbai attacks in 2008 have nothing to do with the disruption in the process. Pakistan is not responsible for those attacks. The whole world has declared Pakistan's role in that. Investigations have been carried out. Evidence far greater than in any other case in the past has been produced by countries other than India, by the US in particular. And yet, India is to blame for the suspension of dialogue, but Pakistan is not to blame for engineering terrorist attacks in India. If you have this kind of a sort of a discourse, then you can begin to understand why there will be no real concrete process or progress. There will be this pretension from time to time. Diplomats like to have little victories of their own.
Okay, Ajay, let me bring
will proclaim those
Cohen
victories,
in very quickly.
but they will be jeopardized constantly by terrorist action.
Okay, Ajay, let me bring Dr. Cohen in. You heard both sides.
I would say, especially to Mr. Sawhney, that India itself is hurt by the absence of a normal relationship with its neighbor Pakistan. When India and Pakistan became independent, there was a single trading unit. As time passed by, that trading unit disappeared, and the Indian economy suffered. India now is zooming ahead economically, although not as fast as people would have expected, but it's going to have to drag Pakistan behind it. India can't rise to be a major power, either in the region or elsewhere, if it has a Pakistan that's crumbling and faltering.
Okay, let me quickly bring Mr. Sheikh in, because we're running out of time. Sorry, Mr. Khan. What would you say to Ajay's argument that Pakistan is not willing to take responsibility for its actions?
No. You see, terrorism is a problem not only for India, it is in fact a more serious problem and more challenging problem for Pakistan. So what India and Pakistan need to do is to join together in combating this evil, this challenge together. And if it was a terrorist act in Mumbai in November 2008 that led to disruption of dialogue, then instead of letting the dialogue process get disrupted, both countries have a mechanism under one agenda item.
They should have come together. They should come together. Dr. Cohen, isn't it indicative of the problem? Both sides have an argument. Both have legitimate concerns. Ajay is saying on one side, Pakistan's not accepting responsibility. Mr. Khan saying Pakistan is accepting responsibility. Where do we go from here?
Well, I think there's room for creative policy between pessimism and optimism. There's really a scope for both countries to move, and also the United States and even China. And that is to build on what has been done, trade and economic exchanges, and to put things like Kashmir in the freezer for a while. That's what Musharraf proposed. When I met him first after his coup and then later publicly, he said that. You know, let's push Kashmir aside. And Pakistanis have to understand that Kashmir is not going to be solved easily. It's certainly not going to be solved to their satisfaction. I've argued that, in a sense, it's everybody I've talked to, Indians and Pakistanis, except the line of control is the final line. Maybe that's where we should all say that's where we're going to wind up, one way or the other. But I think the two countries have to work on doable issues. It's water, trade, people-to-people exchanges, education, culture, visas. All of these things are possible, and they don't involve emotional issues like Kashmir. So I think in Pakistan, you have to accept that Kashmir will be put aside, and India has its own Kashmir problem, quite apart from its relationship with Pakistan. So I think that's the way to.
That's the way to go. Well, thank you very much. I'm afraid that's all the time I have. I want to thank our guests before we say goodbye. Dr. Stephen Cohen, whose book is out, you should read it. Ajay Sani from New Delhi, and Mr. Shamshad Ahmed Khan from Lahore. Thank you very much for joining us. Goodbye, good night, and don't forget to leave your comments on our Facebook page, urduvoa.com.